come on closer so you can see the screen. Ready? All right, welcome everybody here and online, welcome. Usually summers, especially July, are incredibly slow here, and you can kind of see that from our parking lots. They're pretty empty. So I was quite worried about who would show up to Ina and Mark's exhibition, and incredibly pleased to see a pretty big crowd. And I'm also very pleased to see you here for the Leonardo Art Science Evening Rendezvous, which again, we normally don't host in July, but the momentum's there, and it's like when a rock's moving, you just have to go along with it. And here we are, and it's also 50 years of Leonardo, which is very exciting, because when we started these lasers, we were one of 3 places doing it, and now there's over 30. And recently, there's going to be an award for Leonardo at Ars Electronica for pioneer work. So it's really fantastic to see how everything is moving. And we had amazing artists in residence this year, starting with Haytham Nawar, who's here from Egypt, who will speak to us first. And it was great to have him in the house, coming in and out from Egypt so many times, I can't believe it. And talking to Haytham from a different perspective about art and science is so important. So to really move it away from just the Western perspective is really critical to us. And the other fantastic artists in residence who are highlighted tonight, Ina CONRADI and Mark CHAVEZ, come to us from Singapore. So we're really putting out our tentacles out there, and 6 months went like this, but we had a lot of fun. We collaborated on works, we had parties and talked about different things, and we're connecting the nexus to Singapore and Egypt. And so without further ado, I'd like to have you give a tenderest applause to Haytham. Pay attention to this.
Yeah. Good evening, everyone. So I would like to thank first Victoria and the ArtSci team for the opportunity that I can speak for the second time in the laser. And this time I'm not going to speak about myself, because in April I spoke about my exhibition and my art project, but this time I will speak as the founder and the director of Chaotronica. And Chaotronica is a festival of new media and electronic arts in Egypt, and it's the only one in Egypt, Arab world, and North Africa and Middle East as well. I think when I just mentioned the word Egypt, it comes to the memory for everyone, the pyramids. And this is how probably you know it from schools or postcards, but in reality, this is Egypt. So it's completely different than the one you see from the postcards. And this intensity, Cairo is a mega city, they call it. It's 23 million inhabitants. It's the biggest in North Africa, again, and also the Middle East. And so coming with the idea to organize a festival of new media art in Egypt, it's like a necessity to work with art, technology, and science, which creating this platform for artists and scholars and students and engineers and so on. Chaotronica as a festival started as a small exhibition in 2013. It was called DG Fest, or Digital Art Festival, and then in 2016 we came with the idea of Chaotronica itself, and we started with 4 major activities and exhibitions, and more as workshops and an academic conference, as well as some of performances. And we have the major sponsor or supporter is the state, is the Ministry of Culture in Egypt. And they give us, like, because they have huge places, which normally palaces that they have, and they give it to people that actually work in culture and art. So that was some images from the first edition of the project. We did exhibit there from artists from all over the world. We had people from the 5 continents. That was around 45 45 projects from for 55 artists. And the project will have more social, political, and religious context. which will lead a little bit about what we're going to speak about it in the end of my presentation. So this is some images from the exhibition, the conference, and some also performances, also with collaboration with the university where I teach, which is the American University in Cairo, which they have huge also facilities. I'll try to also be a little bit fast. This is the second edition in 2018 in last May, and under the theme of the future of possibilities. And here we have the book, the catalog of the exhibition if you want to look at after. And then this year we had 85 artists from 25 countries, also again the 5 continents. And I mean, the Cairo is a media art festival, or maybe like many others around the world. But what I always feel like it's different is the challenges that we face in organizing such festival in the time of conflict, as we said, in the Middle East at the moment. So again, some images about the exhibition and the project were there from, again, people from all over the world. And just we have the exhibition with 47 artists. They participated there from Egypt and North Africa, also from Europe mostly. I said fortunately and unfortunately from West Europe, because normally the funding, which again one of the problems we will talk about, that comes normally from Europe or in the US. And again, this is some of the images. And we had film screening as well. The activities of Cairo this year, we tried to make it a little bit different. So as normally the people they come with for the exhibition is the major activity, and then you have the conference. People didn't like it so much, we changed it to me like casual talks. We have film screening, we have the workshops, so as an educational part inside. And we changed that, having Cairo residency, so now we're also working with other sister festivals. Like we exchange artists with Ars Electronica, with Japan Media Art Festival, and we try to send a local artist to go and participate in some different places. Also we have Cairo Make, which also was the Fab Lab and the Makers community. And as well we have Cairo Youth, which is our youth, which is again working with the age between 12 until 18. Part of its workshops and also guided tour to educate them about new media and so on. And this is what some images from the workshops in Cairo. And we have, instead of the conference, we have the artist talks. And this is, again, as I said before, this is all like probably any media art festival around the world. But what just make it really different is the challenges we face. I will just take briefly about what kind of challenges we have. The funding. Probably, again, funding is a major problem of funding art and culture, but when it comes to the Middle East, it doesn't exist actually in our budget. Like the state have no budget at all for art. So if you would like to fundraise for art, you have to go for the private sector and try to find money, but they don't actually support art at the moment. So the thing that we look at foreign institutions that can support a kind of art, like Goethe Institute, like Pro Helvetia, the Swiss Culture Foundation, like the American Embassy. And normally this institution are meant to fund their own artists, but they don't fund Egyptian or African or Asian artists. So it's a little bit difficult to find money to people to support other countries than their own citizens. And this is an ongoing problem that I had, like this year, for example, the British Council, I was very angry about the amount of money they give, which is really very little. And she said, like, why you are so angry like that? You should ask your state to give you money. We're just only here to support British artists, but not Egyptian artists or any artists from everywhere else. And some, for example, the American Embassy this year, until 2 weeks before the festival, and said like, we're not interested. 2 weeks before the festival. And that from the American Embassy, which are, again, meant to bring American artists to come to Egypt and exhibit their work. So with this economical difficulty, is a little bit really very, very, very difficult to get money to do such a kind of very high-tech, expensive kind of festival. The second thing is the participation. Still, I mean, media art is really very old term, and the field itself, it's old. But then when it comes to the Middle East, when it comes to Egypt, is a little bit new for people. People didn't know how to interact with a new media, and they still have the idea of traditional art, or the traditional form of art, like, don't touch, this is very precious and you cannot touch and interact with. And this is, again, with the culture of people in Egypt, it's challenging if you want to exhibit that type of work. So we try to play, again, you simulate how that works, you invite people, and you try to go for places, like unusual places that can attract people, because people normally attracted to the technology. And again, with the very low education, because we have in Egypt like 39% illiterate people. So we go very low to the level that you really simplify that this is an artwork. It's still that you work with the smartphone, you have it in your hand, but you can do an artwork with the smartphone or the tablet, or and so on. So again, it's part of what we do is educating people, but again, it's a big challenge that we try to work with when you're organizing such an event there. And lastly, which is the most difficult thing, is censorship. And again, I mentioned that we have political and religious context, and this is like taboos in Egypt, and mostly also in the Arab world, that you cannot touch. So this year, for example, we had problem with the national security, that they come and they want to take out some artworks because they criticize so much religion or political situations. And again, even if you discuss with them that this is inappropriate, you cannot remove an artwork, because the artists have the freedom of expression. They can discuss whatever kind of subject, but you have to work with that, with this political regime we have in Egypt after the Arab Spring in 2011, that you have a different mentality, and if you really want to exhibit or work with artists, you have to find a way not to make them angry, but at the same time exhibit and give them opportunities. Especially people, when they come from abroad, they don't know what does it mean that you cannot exhibit an artwork because it touches a religious taboo or a political figure. And again, that's the thing that we try to work with in Egypt. Thank you.
I should mention that during Haytham's time here, he created a fantastic project on bread. And the exhibition was on bread using mechanical Turk. So people all around the world were drawing their idea of bread. It was a beautiful exhibition. We have it documented. So I'm here to skip to our next speaker, which will be Victor. Okay. Because yes. So everybody, please give a warm hand to Victor Acevedo. And you introduce the next speaker.
Okay.
The last slide will be the next speaker.
Okay, sure. Okay, great. So I've got my timer here. And I have my water here. Give me a moment to get situated. Yeah, thank you so much for being here, everyone. Thank you, Victoria, for organizing this globally. And Mark and Ina, thank you so much for inviting me. It's a great honor to be here. And anyway, as you know, I'm Victor Acevedo, and I'm going to do a little sort of encapsulation of the trajectory of my career that started in traditional media and quickly went into digital as I became aware of it when I was in art college. But they didn't actually have studio classes yet. It was only existed as a survey topic. But I saw that was the future. However, when I was in traditional media, painting and drawing, I already had this sort of interest in art and math and art and geometry, and I was interested in M.C. Escher. So these are some details of some studies of work that I did, zoomorphic tessellation work that I did based on Escher's work in the similar genre. And I had an opportunity in 1979 to go to the Escher Foundation when it was in The Hague and make transcriptions of his original notebooks, which were tessellation studies, so I could really see how he built those zoomorphic patterns. And the one on the top, I guess the top right, where you're looking at it, is kind of gives you an inkling of what his zoomorphics look like in their native or raw format. They were actually built on graph paper. And so it occurred to me that this was kind of a graphical, traditional media graphical harbinger for digital, the digital paradigm, with the linear plotting of lines with a starting point and an end point was very much like vector graphics or spline-based graphics. And then you had this pixel grid, which is very much like raster graphics. So that was a thought I had. Well, this was kind of, and I didn't think of that at the time because I was immersed in traditional media. But later I go, wow, there's a direct connection. And that kind of, when I became aware of digital technologies for making images, which they called computer graphics then, and that was through Gene Youngblood, who taught a survey class, Expanded Cinema. And he studied what was happening at NYIT, and he presented it to us as Art Center students. And so that's where sort of the light bulb went on. So anyway, I better not spend too much time on that one. But so then I also got into Buckminster Fuller's work, and the idea of all space filling polyhedra was kind of a natural habitat in that domain. Of course, everybody knows the geodesic dome, but he also wrote these two large books called Synergetics, The Geometry of Thinking, and it's very heavily based on a view of the world and energetic phenomena that's mapped over polyhedral phenomena. So kind of bringing that into the work, I was kind of interested in going from 2D polygons to 3D polyhedra, all space filling. And something I didn't talk about is I quickly released the parameter of having the foreground, background toggling that Escher did perceptually, where you look at it's birds and fish and you have the background, foreground. So I released that, so I used what's called open packed strategies for polygons, where you have these abstract shapes. You can see there on the bottom right. So I'm allowing the interstitial non-zoomorphic shapes to be part of the periodicity. And then I also was into this sort of randomness with underlying chaos. So this was kind of a hybrid of 2D and 3D. You have the hexagonal tessellation of polygons, but you also have this cellular take on those hexagonal domains that could also be cubical, seen from the famous three-quarter cube. And then you can build out from there. So I was still doing oil painting, so that previous study was a preliminary to a painting like this. The other influences were Salvador Dali, the Surrealism, and also Cubism, and the way that vector went from Cezanne into Picasso and Braque, breaking down space, reinterpreting it, connecting figure and ground. So it was kind of a hybrid of approaches that had already been established in the late 19th century into the 20th, but at the same time quickly moving into computer graphics, because by 1980 I was aware the century is almost over, the party is almost over, everything's been done, as a young art student. What's next? Oh yes, computer graphics, digital, that's the future. So it took me off from there, and I just stopped painting. 1984 is my last oil painting. So this is an early, I started in computer graphics, digital art, 1983. This is from 1987, and this is almost like an Illustrator type of program, purely vector-based. It did have a Z buffer, however. It was called Artworks. You'd be hard pressed to find a copy now. It ran on a PC. It was pre-Photoshop. So here's a little bit of the Buckminster spherical influence coming in, spherical domain, along with the open packed polygonal zoomorphics and a bit of surrealism. So it's always an amalgam. And I thought this might be fine. So I went through this similar process. This is from about 89, 91. So I was working with the Cubicomp then, and that was one of the early 3D modeling and animation package that ran on the desktop PC that had that kind of capability. Some of you know that, remember that system. So, and this I thought was kind of funny, is I still have a lot of floppy disks. So this is the medium or media that we saved the files on, and you know, as a popular computer graphic end user piece, you know, personal computing, you know, the capacity of this was I think 1.4 megabytes, yeah, 5.25, something like that. So it's like everything was scaled down. It was pretty funny. And this was iris printing. That was a proof from the iris printer, and that was kind of, at the time, those of you remember the iris? Oh yeah, exactly. So anyway, to move quickly, because I want to show some videos. So this is kind of a piece that I just kind of rediscovered. It was from a study for another piece called X Hour that many people have seen, but it was a ramp up to it. So this kind of brings that all together, this kind of surrealism. It's called Tavern Mirror, and you got the space frames, and it has a lot of other charged content along with the formal underlying structural components. So that's kind of, in a sense, my aesthetic. I think as it develops. So we'll just, how are we doing on time?
Maybe you can just show short amounts of each video.
Okay, a little excerpt of each. Okay, there. Okay, all right. Okay, they're short, but I'll stop them sooner. Okay, so that was a piece, collaboration with a circuit bender, a guy named Igor Amokian. That's fairly recent. I think that was from last year. And then this is another collaboration with a free jazz structuralist composer named Richard Wood. So a little abrupt change there. So another point I want to share is I've been investigating real-time video workflows, working with software that VJs would use, but using it high res and recording it and bringing it into a standard, edit timeline. So some of these graphics are popular, or these videos utilize that component. So I can do these real-time jam sessions to the track and then cherry pick the best bits and bring those into the video timeline. So that's kind of fun to do that. And of course, these can be performed live in a live mix. So,
what kind of device?
I'm sorry.
What kind of man-machine interface are you using to keyboard?
Yeah, I can use keyboard or MIDI controller, and I use VDMX as my favorite software to use, which is kind of like Resolume. It's very powerful VJ software, so to speak. I mean, it's way beyond the sort of the domain of VJ, actually. So I'll play a little bit. Oh, there's John's coming up, J-WALT. Do I have time for one little snippet? Okay, I gotta go back and let's see if cool. So that, thank you. Thank you so much. Thanks. Yeah. So that was called Terabyte Psychedelics. And, yeah. And it was a collaboration with a band called Hookah. And they do this sort of contemporary, abstract, improvisational music that's, you know, psychedelic, basically. So thank you so much.
So introduce Jay.
Oh, yes, I'm sorry. So the next speaker is J-WALT, the ADAMCZYK.
Thank you, Victor. That's great. Thanks for having me. I'm J-WALT. I do primarily, well, I do a lot of things, but the thing I'm most proud of is the live performances that I do, where I take over a space and create forms, and I create universes that exist only for the moment. So I'm going to play a video that will give you a taste. I think it'll actually eat up most of my time, but here we go. I'm just going to stop this. So that shows you some of the ideas of how I draw and perform in real time in immersive spaces. So you saw me there at the Macau Science Center, the big planetarium there. It's a big 3D immersive VR auditorium, a planetarium. But I want to talk about an aspect of my work. I talk about expanding the universe. So we think about expanding the universe as far as a galaxies far, far away, but we actually have that ability to create parts of the universe here as artists. Art is a primary human activity. It's something that humans do, have always done. It's I don't like to see it minimized as far as people thinking it's a luxury or it's some sort of a side thing. People do it, have always done it, and there's an aesthetic dimension to reality, and art is our way of participating within that. Sometimes people talk about art as, oh, it's how we understand the universe. Well, it is that, but that's not all it is. And so I talk about how we use it to expand the universe. When we create, we make something that doesn't exist, that hasn't existed before. That's a way that we create the universe. I was talking about how we talk about the universe expanding at that macro scale, the big galaxies, but the universe is infinite in all directions. It's infinite down at the at the nanoscale, at the picoscale as well. It's also infinite as far as the diversity and the variation. There used to be, at one point in the universe, we're told, that the universe was all the same everywhere. It was, and then bit by bit, it's increased in diversity, it's increased in variety. And as active, conscious beings, we add to that. We're part of the turbulence that creates the diversity, the kind of fractal reworkings and extra detail and concentrated energies that go into creating a diverse, expanding universe. With art, we are driven by, we create based on our desires. We create based on what we want to have exist in the universe that didn't exist before. As we create, we're putting our fantasies, our ideals, our aesthetics, our desires into, and creating those as bringing those into reality, taking those out of the idea of our mind and actually realizing them. One example I can easily think of is not too many years ago, this woman wrote this book about kids going to a wizard academy. It was complete fantasy, but now you can actually go there. You can actually go to that wizard academy. So the line between fantasy and reality is blurring. We have greater technology, we have greater power than ever before to make our fantasies into reality. I call my show Lucid Dreamscapes. It's the idea of controlling your dream, of not just being a passive spectator, but actually taking control of those dreams. And sometimes I think that it's sometimes I think that it's the most important thing that a person can do. We know the future is going to be different. We know it's going to be different, and we need to take control of what our future is going to be. We need to decide whether we want there to be never-ending space battles or never-ending contrived drama, or if we want to express joy and wonder that is full of endless variety. So I'm J-WALT. This is my site. You can hit me up online, YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, whatever. So thank you again for having me. Next up is Ina. Oh, whoa.
I think we're gonna go to Agnes,
Okay.
right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Right now?
Yeah, we skipped you. We were waiting for you. Did you get lost? You did get lost. People get lost. It's a test, right? If you can find us, that's a good thing.
Failed.
No, you made it. You made it. You're here. And, okay. So I'm actually going to attempt to pronounce your name. Ready? You tell me if I got it or not. EDDY.
That's right.
VAJARAKITIPONGSE.
Close enough.
Close? Okay, you'll say it correctly. EDDY and Agnes, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting us. I'm Agnes.
I'm Eddie, VAJARAKITIPONGSE.
That's how you pronounce his name. And together we run LAVA, the Los Angeles Video Artists Collective. And we want to tell you today about that group. And because Eddie was one of the first members of that group when it was started 15 years ago, I'm going to let him tell you how it all started out.
Yeah, thanks. And thanks for having us here. So, as she said, Lava started about 15 years ago, so we're going to have a quinceañera at the end of the year this year, so you guys are all invited. But yeah, Lava started as, even the name itself, Los Angeles Video Artists, was a group where 15 years ago, that's what you called it, was video art. And it was always meant to be an open group, to provide an open platform for a collective group of people that wanted to experiment with video and projection and programming. So we would have monthly meetups, and through the years things got a little bit quiet, and that wasn't a bad thing. It just meant that we were actually getting jobs in these fields. We were developing the software, we were developing the hardware, we were developing you know, the common ground. And so now we have video artists is maybe a little dated, but we kept the name. Because now there's terms like immersive and experiential and these things that marketing has attached themselves to. But I was asked to, being one of the people that still live in LA, I was asked to direct and program for Lava about 2 years ago. And what we did was Agnes and I looked at what Lava had become in all of these years, over a decade, and where was its active membership, who was still around, and there was a whole community of people that had never been to a Lava meeting but liked the name and liked the kind of the idea of it, and maybe saw a few weird videos online that we had, but we needed to put more of an emphasis onto dialogue and sharing, and not just the tech side of things. We wanted to allow the wave of technology that's present with us now to coincide now with dialogue from artist and installation standpoint. So
and we actually took a year
yeah,
to talk to existing members who are active and really talking about where they're at, where they're wanting to go. And what we found out is that the skills are really broad. So we wanted to keep that and use that as a good thing, as an opportunity. And what we decided to do is like several different types of programs. We have every 2 weeks a meetup, usually in a bar, and and we just meet. There's no entrance fee and nothing like that. Everybody can come. We want to get to know everybody on a personal basis, and we want to talk about what projects people are working on. And it's been now over a year that, and maybe I'm just making this up, it's been a year that we're doing this, and it was really interesting to see how many people connect at these meetings and then start projects together and develop their own projects, you know, have questions and get answers and get inspired and so forth. So that's happening on a regular basis. And we have a meetup page on meetup.com where all the dates are published. So if you're interested in joining us, please find information there. Then we also decided to have art shows, proper art shows in real galleries, as a platform for our artists to show their work and to get feedback. And it's been interesting to us to see how artists who met at Lava are then developing work for these art shows. This was the very first one that we did, and different types of applications and projects were super fun. From there, we are singling out several artists from these art shows and have them give in-depth artist talks. And then, you know, and the art shows are fun. Like, there's way more people coming than to the Lava meetups because they bring their friends and it's just a party. And after the art shows, we're doing these in-depth talks with specific artists, and so they can show the back end of the project and really talk about how they developed the idea and how they're putting it together. And then we also do things like this. This is a BYOB event. Sorry, I'm German, I can't pronounce BNW. Anyways,
oh, that's good fast.
So bring your own beamer is the event. We built this sculpture made for
You can just click OK on the that one works.
Are you looking for?
You
the
know,
cursor?
but I don't have a cursor. There we go. Oh. There we go.
There we go. So we built that sculpture in this warehouse and had whoever wanted to come bring a projector, put it on the floor or wherever you want, and just go wild with visuals. And we had DJs, and if you can figure it out, we're going to show you a video of that. It was pretty
Yeah.
fun.
You sit
That play button
back.
where you were.
Up here?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
Okay.
Yeah, so we provided a light sound reactive sculpture and invited artists to bring your projectors. If you didn't have projectors, you could bring media, and we'd go ahead and set you up really quick, give you a crash course in projection mapping. And then what I was hoping for happened, which was that people said, you know, there's more space beyond the object, and started going onto the walls, onto the ceiling, onto the floor. And people were just lining up saying, okay, when can I get the next projection in? And Agnes has been awesome at documenting everything, which is also like another thing that we wanted to make sure that Lava had good documentation presence too. And this was one of these funny events where Lava members were meeting each other for the first time. Some were already practicing with each other. We had a couple members go like, oh, I wasn't sure if I should bring something, and then their friend said, go get your stuff, and then they brought it in, and it was an incredible thing. So somebody else brought another light sculpture too, and yeah, that was our BYOB event, and we're gonna have them more regularly too, because we killed this 3,500 square foot space, and it was just like too much. We need to get bigger.
What does
Yeah.
BYOB stand for?
Bring your own beamer. And that's taken from an older term in the 90s out of Europe, and they call projectors beamer. And they have beamer parties and stuff in San Francisco too that have these beamer parties as well. It has a title in it, that's good.
Yeah. And then back again from the fun and the visual and playground and everything, back to sharing work, sharing ideas, talking about it, getting feedback, developing it further. We were invited by WeWork to program something in their space that serves also their artistic community who's working there. And we decided to do an event which was an evening of demos, which means, similar to today, short talks of different artists presenting their work, setting up in different spaces, and people can coming in at and see a bunch of stuff in one evening, hear about a lot of stuff, and then follow up or not. And
our friends, Media Art Nexus was in the house that night too. So
Yeah.
We'll see a little bit of footage from that night.
do you want to say something about that, because the music is not that important here?
Well, they have title cards and stuff too. Yeah, so Zephyr Man is new to Lava, but brought old school Peppers, Ghosts, and CRTs. Old school Lava member, but wasn't doing VR back then, and brought VR to present, which is super great, and doing big shows. You know Dr. Mindset, of course, and the Media Art Nexus stuff. It's like schooling a few people there, trying to show them what's up with touch. And yeah, we had an interesting turnout. This was a new Lava member who is actually a martial artist, and connected through our informal meetups to get together do a full Connect reactive visual projection piece. And we all had to get out of the way because she's swinging a big bow staff around. Felix is also an original Lava member too from years ago, and he's figured out how to inject MIDI control into Chrome and make a awesome video player. Mandel doing his leap motion visuals is really funny and really great stuff. And he built this device that holds the sensor too, so it's sculptural too in that way. David messing around with flashes of video to give you a whole new sense of narrative. And then people get an applause, so it's a good thing. So that is lava in a nutshell. What we thought of when we were invited for this talk, and thinking and knowing that this is about science and art meshing together too, and you know what can a community bring to this? So this is an artwork called Ginger, and Ginger deals with science and art. It's a sculpture, but it's an interactive sculpture. It's a sculpture that was created out of this need to continue to create, but also to try to take a break and try to, like, meditation's really hard, so have to try to figure out ways to speed that up a little bit too, to keep the cadence going. So an investigation was done into merkabas, these esoteric spaces for self meditation, and what we did was we expanded on that design, carved a cave out into it, and so more than one person can experience it. So what happens is you enter this space, and surround sound speakers are available, light frequencies are pulsing, binaural compositions are in headphones. It all is programmed to induce an alpha state within about 4 minutes. So it gets put into places of sensory overload where it's supposed to rejuvenate you to continue going on. So we got invited to Long Beach last year to Music Tastes Good, and it was great because loud music everywhere, food everywhere, people everywhere, and it turned out to be like the place to come and hang out and keep partying afterwards. So it was nice. Some video of it here. It's, you see people just really getting into it. I mean, and we left this video quiet on purpose because it is completely noisy, this place. You've all been to music festivals. What else did I want to say about it?
It was really interesting for me to
Yeah.
see, even at a music festival where you can still hear the music because it's very loud, that the concept actually worked out.
Yeah.
We left inside of that Ginger little notebooks, and people who were sitting
Yeah.
down and putting the headphones on, besides a lot of doodles, they also wrote so many things, poems, and people stayed around and hung out and really wrote some very grateful notes to us and really thoughtful comments. I mean, more about themselves, but it was really interesting for me to see how that concept that actually Eddie and your co-artist Jason Doller, they developed together this sculpture, that the concept that they made up in their minds actually works even at this loud music concert.
So yeah, it's nice to make something that it was kind of meant for us, and then to put it out there and share it, and then it actually keeps working. So it shows up at art shows, and it's living in a busy studio right now. We have plans to put it in other transit areas and
Union
so forth.
Station.
Union Station is on there too. Yeah.
Thank
you
you
so
guys.
much.
All right, so sorry, I have to skip down again. So now, Ina, you're on. Oops, I'm ahead of you. Sorry. One down. And now welcome Ina CONRADI, who is our featured artist, together with Mark, who she will introduce.
Thank you,
You're
Vesna.
welcome.
Thank you guys for hanging around. And I have been here artist in residence for about half year, and it's gone too fast. So I will start with Singapore, where we were invited, both Mark and I, to set up an art school in 2015. I am coming from very traditional background, so I was trying to see how I can allocate my paintings and my visual works in architectural spaces. And these are some walkthrough environmental installations with the, this is called internal external. It was set up in Little India and Singapore. And this is when I start contemplating to abandon the substrate and digital media and move more into filmmaking. So this is Deep Space. So few first films that were done using stereoscopy. It was really big at that time, 2010. So basically creating a new pictorial spaces of the paintings that's kind of cross into space, into 3 dimension. And the piece is currently playing in the gallery as well. So I'm also interested in mise-en-scène, or how can these paintings or animated elements be installed in galleries and become more like a mise-en-scène, like a cine installations. And this was a film moving from gallery to cinema, back to the gallery, an installation. This is a film that I did, Elysian Fields. In respect for time, I won't show any clips. I'll just quickly, hopefully won't play. Yeah, this Elysian Fields was dedicated to my father, who was a World War II veteran. So it was based on the historical data about my dad, and then spin into this very kind of experimental short film. I like to see those films again from cinema in more 360 immersive spaces. So this was a battle of spaceships above the seawater. And Elysian Field, the title was that to commemorate my dad, to commemorate all heroes, and basically this question about death and where do we go. And so the original title was Paradise, and then I changed it to Elysian Fields. So back to the mise-en-scène, or how this cinema-bound movies or very experimental stories go into and live into different spaces. The Chrysalis is also playing. You can watch it. It's a film that Mark and I did together, and we got really great award for it. It's about it's based around the story of a chrysalis, or in a struggle to emerge. And it's very short, but it took a long time to make. So this is a little clip. So Chrysalis, what is nice with both Mark and I, we really like to kind of cross over, and Mark is very based in a traditional cinema, and now we finally are going through these phases, and the last phase of our collaboration is this platform Media Art Nexus that Mark will be talking as well about. It's a large LED screen that was set up by NTU Museum, myself and Mark. We came together and conceptualized this large LED screen, about 15 meters by 2 meters. It's located in a very busy passageway of a university. And so since inauguration in 2016, we had about a ton of people participating and submitting works. And coming here to LA, my desire is to create a bridge, invisible bridge between UCLA, LA, and Lava people in Singapore, and have content merge and travel. We traveled quite a bit with the works. We went to Tokyo, we went to Ars Electronica, we were in Cube in Queensland University Technology, and where we had my first encounter with art, science-inspired art, and this is Victoria's Vesna piece, Noise Aquarium. It was a huge installation and then on the picture, Jumping of Joy is the curator, June Kim, and we collaborated with her to set up that exhibition also in Singapore. So I was really pleased that Victoria submitted a noise aquarium, and we then showcased it and also had talks and people talking about their projects. This is work by Marpi. He's a really big artist right now, and this is something he had installed as well, collaboration with an Indian artist. Future plans, we have a collaboration with Hamburg. It's going strong, and I'm a little bit panicking because it's going too good. Elfi Philharmonic is a big concert hall in Hamburg, and they spent an enormous amount of money to build it. It was a very controversial building because it costed so much, millions of euros. And it is built on, it's representing a sails or a big wave that's rising from the very old storage house in port of Hamburg. And so the project is called Elman, because we are combining Elfi Philharmonic and Media Art Nexus. So it's called Elman, das Elman Project. I really like this. So that's how I'm going to introduce it for now. So this is the students that are so happy. Thorsten is standing on the right-hand side because he's the curator of the whole media wall. In the middle is the professor. So it's about 20 students. So what we split the class in two. 5 groups will be creating for Media Art Nexus. So we already tested, it's working nicely. And then the rest was another group of 5 is creating for Elfi Philharmonic. And so when I go back, we will embark on this really wonderful project, and Vernissage will be in November. Very cold, and we will hopefully launch both works at the same time. Time zone. 26th will be premiere in Singapore, in Germany, and 30th of November will be premiere in Singapore, and we are really looking forward to that. Thank you for having me, Wesley. And next speaker is Mark Chavez.
Hello, and thank you, Victoria, for having us out. And as artists and residents, it's been a real privilege and luxury for us. And coming from Singapore, it's been liberating too. So my work, I'm going to talk about more my artistic practice and what I've been doing and kind of what's inspiring. I used to do laser shows, so it's kind of funny. It's a laser here. I invited a bunch of laser. Anybody from laser here? No, laser people. There's a it's Paul Rother. Yeah. And then we worked together too, Victor, in lasers years ago. And so that was some. You saw the this Mexican piece I did on the side of a federal building in Westwood during the Olympics. So that piece is feeds into what I'm doing now. So I just worked on a lot of movies, and I'm an expert in computer graphics. So what I'm really interested in is the way these how Mexicans, ancient Mexicans used imagery, and how they empowered their imagery. And a lot of this was actually done through a lot of their thinking and philosophy was done through, of course, with the aid of this god Xochipilli, who was the god of psychotropic substances. And this is a picture of him, like a 13th century or so sculpture, 14th century sculpture of him in ecstasy. And so there's nothing like that in European pantheon, where you have you have not a psychotropic ecstasy, but certainly you have ecstasy in terms of religious. So this is called the smoking mirror. So what they used to do, they'd stare at it, and then they'd see all these visions. And their mind would be so trained, through these vision practices, where they take the drugs and see, all the kinds of patterns. And later on, the mind just becomes very pliable to this kind of stuff. When you take, like, if you've ever met people that take a lot of acid, they're always like very strange, So, but this is an example of people who just stare in these things, and then this one in particular was stolen and taken to Europe and used by this guy Edward Kelly with the alchemist John Dee to invent this whole like fantastic world, which is where angels would come and tell them all about this stuff. You always hear about these New Agers that come up, write these tomes that are full of these complex things that they automatically just wrote. And so that's kind of really interesting that people come up with these whole religions and whole ways of thinking and whole ways of being, and all it's just all imagined. It seems to me, and the reason I say it's imagined is because this apophenia is this phenomena, this German term coined by psychiatrist Klaus Conrad about the beginning states of schizophrenia. It's an unmotivated seeing of connections accompanied by specific feelings of abnormal meaningfulness. So like the early stages of delusional thought, self-referential overinterpretation of actual sensory perceptions as opposed to hallucinations. Apophenia has come to imply a universal human tendency to seek patterns in random information. So you can imagine somebody staring at a disc, and your mind starts flowing. They're just putting these, and then they write them down, and then it becomes a tradition, and so it becomes a whole religion, or it becomes maybe even an art form. So this is pareidolia, which is the actual the phenomenon of seeing things. Like this in the Mars orbiter, where people thought that was a big sculpture of a man. Or there's another one on the side over here. You can see this guy walking. It looks like some guy trucking along, and what's he doing there? So people it looks real, and so artists have used these kinds of techniques in abstraction to suggest things either with color, form, shapes, and placing them in certain ways, or juxtaposing things. So that's very, very interesting to me. Here's some more examples of this. Mark Rothko is using color fields. He talks about how he emphatically rejected the reading of his work in merely formal aesthetic terms, insisting that he was not interested in the relationship of color or form or anything else. Rather, he used abstract means to express basic human emotions, tragedy, ecstasy, doom, and so on, earnestly striving to create an art of awe-inspiring intensity for a secular world. Those viewers who broke down and wept before his paintings, he stated, had the same religious experience I had when I painted them. So he's just painting just with a field. That's really fascinating that he's able to do that. And so these other artists do similar things with more representational work. And so, going back to what this work I was doing before we went to Singapore, I used to make these little characters, and they were fed with AI. They would talk to you, and they'd say all kinds of things. People would say all kinds of really personal things to them. But the problem with these characters is they were so sexual that I decided, to take the same kind of thing where you could talk to them and make them, have good reactions or bad reactions, or respond to you, and based on keywords. So we were thinking of making this kind of a abstract painting that would you could talk to it or behave to it or act with it, and then it would change according to how you were doing it. If you liked what you were doing, that would be very happy colors, and so we started doing some research with that. Now currently, this is my son all wired up with the EEGs. We're working with computer engineering and psychology, and we're trying to measure the effect of abstract movies on the viewer. So we have a bunch of music that's been that our psychologists and science and our computer engineering people have said that, okay, these sounds, these songs typically give us these reactions in viewers. They typically make you feel happy, make you feel angry, but their selection was very odd. You know, they had, because you know, they were all picking anime music. So we have 20 songs, all of anime orchestra. You know that. So the imagery is very pretty, but it's just it's a little bit odd. But like here's some of the images. There's a site, the Emote portfolio on Vimeo, that has all 20 of them if you want to have a look. So this is based on some research we were doing before. We were looking at the emotional study, and this is anger or happiness states. And so we actually found, we put all these images online, and we had people run a survey on them. They said, whether they thought it was happy, sad, whether it make them melancholy, or we ran with a group of psychologists. They actually ran the test, and they said that we came to a realization, or that some artists know this, that certain shapes make you feel happy, certain colors make you feel happy, certain colors make you feel angry. And so, and it was all based around this circumplex model of effect. Or we tried to map the results to the circumplex model effect so that we could get some kind of a dial system, so that I can get some kind of dialing system, so that when I go forward in this next phase and start creating imagery, if I want to create imagery that's happy and pleased or positive feelings, I can have this little library of colors, shapes, and maybe characters that would be automatically drawn on when you want to inspire that kind of feeling. Just another version of that done in color. And so we that's what we're trying to build in this. Although these are more director driven. We don't have any EEGs set up. I'm just I get sound, and then I'm using audio reactive techniques to move the imagery, and it's in this large hallway in Singapore. And so the next step is to really make this gel. Maybe I'll work with Victoria with her octopus project, and that would be wonderful. And because that's exactly what I'd like to do, exactly down the line.
With your son.
And with subjects in Singapore. Yeah, we did that already. Did that, and we have readings, and they have a whole bunch of other people. They're doing readings. It's an ongoing project. So yeah, going forward, this is Media Art Nexus, and thank you.
So for those of you who have been to these talks before, they're always colored by who our guests are, and this time our honored guests are Mark and Ina. And I found this really there's always a connection and a thread that runs through it that I tried to analyze. And this one, I had to struggle a little bit because I feel almost like a throwback to 1969, 50 years ago. So it's 50 years of Leonardo, since Leonardo was established. But think about 1969. Right? It's when we saw the moon for the first time, so we saw the Earth and space for the first time. Psychedelics were going crazy. It was the summer of love, right? Which was very much present tonight. And there was a definite shift in consciousness happening, right? That the world is just different from 1969 to now. I think we're in the midst of it. So all the violence and all the stuff that were like this kind of onslaught of negative, horrible, weird stuff that we're getting through media, there's like a opposite reaction. So it's like basic physics. For every action, there's an opposite reaction. And I really felt that tonight with your exhibition, with the talks, with everybody really working on showing other people's work too, like we do here, and trying to make some kind of difference and change. So I just really hope that we envision a different type of world than what's being fed to us. And I find this evening really hopeful and inspirational. Thank you. And we ran out of food, but we have lots of wine, which would make some good conversations. So everybody enjoy.